Welcome to Modern Tactical Shooting. Now, this video is all about the history of shotguns in Special Forces. Specifically, I'm going to cover my period of time. I'm not going to go way back through all of Special Forces history, but my time basically from 1998 up until I retired in 2017, all the shotguns that we used and that I saw on deployments. So let's get into it right now. So I started selection in 1997. I made it into the Q course going through as an 18 Bravo, that is a weapons sergeant. Now during my time in the Q course, and this photo is from 1998, the summer of 98, I'm holding a Winchester Model 1200. These were the only shotguns we had in the 18 Bravo course, and these Model 1200s go back to Vietnam is when they were first adopted by the Army. And I think last used in combat in 1989 in the invasion of Panama. This photo right here is an MP from that time. And in 1998, these were really just regulated to training. In the 18 Bravo course, these things got shot every month, taken apart, reassembled. They were just basically training aids. And these were totally, I would say, beat to death, but they ran super smooth. Very stout, very well-built shotgun. Going into my first team in 1998, in the fall of 98, ODA 531, when I first showed up, we didn't have shotguns on the team at all. In fact, the only shotguns in 5th Special Forces Group were Remington 870 police models with the top folding stock, 12-inch barrels, and they were for SIF teams only. That's the Commander's Interdiction Force. Basically, your hostage rescue teams. They had them for breaching. We didn't have any shotguns. And it was about 1999 or 2000, if my memory serves me correctly, that all teams finally got issued 2 Mossberg 590s each. Now these Mossbergs, they were the 20-inch barrel version, of course, and they had the bead front sight. The 590 has an 8+1 capacity. And these shotguns, they would get used pretty heavily, but they were not without issues. And let me get into the 590 right now. Now, the intent behind the 590s was to give each ODA 2 fighting shotguns, hence the full-size 20-inch barreled 590s. And these guns would be used pretty heavily, but not as intended. They were really used for shotgun breaching. We basically put pistol grips on them, and yes, it's a 20-inch long barrel, but we used them for breaching doors during the early days in Iraq. That's all we had. Again, only SIF teams had the Model 870. So going into the 2003-2004 invasion of Iraq, we used them for a heck of a lot of breaching. In the photos here, you can see it hanging off my left side, that 20-inch barreled. And that's what normal Special Forces teams had. So we had to go with what we really were issued, and that's the best they could give us was the 590. Now, the 590 in a desert environment, I'm not a fan at all. The biggest issue is the magazine tube spring. Here on this Benelli M4, this is the magazine tube spring underneath here. On the 590, it was super weak. So if you left the shotgun fully loaded all the time, the spring would get some set. Combine that with the dust of the desert, and you would start getting feeding issues with these guns. So I'm not a fan of Mossberg really at all. I'm jaded from my times early on in the war. Now, we did take these 590s to a course at Blackwater. This super grainy video footage right here is from 2003. We attended a fighting shotgun course. Again, the intent behind the 590 originally was to use as a fighting shotgun. The course was taught by 2 retired cops. Who better to teach about running a pump than cops who used them their whole career? It was an outstanding course. And here you can see various loading methods I'm trying. And I'm going to talk more about pouches and loading styles later on here in the video. It's the early 2000s, but I will touch on that. So back to the 590 and really its use. Again, we mainly used it for breaching all the Special Forces teams. Now in 2005, finally, Special Forces would adopt the Remington 870 police model with that 12-inch shorty breaching barrel, and they would forward deploy these shotguns downrange. If you watch my history of the MP5 and Special Forces video, the way teams got MP5s is they just sent MP5s to all the different team locations in Iraq. They did the same thing in 2005. We finally got proper breaching shotguns. So by 2005, they weren't permanently assigned, again, except for those SIF teams. They had Remington 870s permanently assigned to them. But we did have 2 per team, at least in Iraq, for your Iraq rotation. Because again, we breached a lot of doors. In Iraq, everything was light skin metal doors, but a shotgun breaching round, you can breach that no problem. I'll talk more about our breaching techniques and the rounds we used here in a little bit. But I love the Remington 870 police model for breaching, superb little shotgun. And again, it was only a temporary loan. We would eventually go back to a different type of Mossberg for breaching, which I'll talk here in a little bit. But these photos are from all of my time in Iraq. And again, 590, not ideal for breaching, but again, that's all we had, and that's what you just have to work with. Okay, so I'm all dressed up because I want to show the breaching shotgun manual of arms and how we stowed our shotguns on our kit. First off, this of course is not an M4A1, but this is the original car stock and multi-point sling that I used in the early days of Iraq from Soft Mod Block 1. I've held on to it. Now the way I have this shotgun stored right here is in a homemade retainer. In the late 90s and going into early 2000s, the commercial shotgun retainers did not exist yet, so we had to make our own. This one right here is made from a bent coat hanger. You simply cut off a piece of coat hanger, start taping the heck out of it with your Army 100-mile-an-hour tape, fit it to your belt where you want it so you can go hands off with the shotgun, and it stows basically right behind my hip. And that's how a lot of us carried them. And the top part is 550 cord, a strap, or even a bungee cord, and you just snap link it or D-ring link it to one of your shoulders. Now I'm a lefty with the rifle, a righty with a pistol, so I always wore my shotgun on the left because I wanted my pistol side free, and I can manipulate the shotgun around to breach doors. Of course, this is not a Remington true breaching military shotgun. This is a Remington Shockwave. The only difference is it's a 14-inch barrel and it has this weirdo pistol grip, but it's basically the same thing, and I can do the same manual arms as far as stowing and how I carry the shotgun. So again, stow it right back behind the hook when it's not in use. All right, let me talk about shotgun breacher employment. So first off is, how do you roll with the shotgun? Loaded, on safe, not loaded. I learned and I support the technique called dry hull, and I'll explain that in a second. But I've seen Special Forces flip-flop between different techniques, having a round in the chamber and manipulating the safety on and off as you breach doors, and I've seen that go horribly wrong. At Fort Bragg, around, I think it was 2007-ish, we had an assaulter breach a door, rack it, attempt to put it on safe, and he AD'd into another assaulter's leg. You've got this short shotgun. You're trying to manipulate this small safety. It's easy to flag somebody. I do not support rolling with a shotgun hot and relying on the safety. So I learned the dry hull technique, and I think that's the way to go. So to set the shotgun up, you're gonna rack it, you're gonna fire it. So it's been fired, it's gonna stay on fire. You're not gonna touch the safety, leave it on fire. The gate will now actuate. You're gonna go ahead and load it up. I have dummy rounds. Now our military shotguns only held 4 because we had 12-inch barrels. So you're gonna load it up, again, keeping the shotgun on fire. And that's it, you're ready to breach. And this is not gonna go off, it's already been fired. You go ahead and stow it. Go out and do great things on the mission. They call for a shotgunner. So you simply come on up, rack the shotgun, do your breach and fire it. You do not re-rack it. It's called dry hull because it's a fired hull. You leave it like this and you re-stow it. The gun can't pump and shoot itself. You come up on another door, you simply take out your shotgun again, rack it, and breach that next door, and again, don't re-rack it. And that's the dry hull technique. I think that's the safest and fastest way for the shotgunner to be rolling and employing that shotgun. Now in 2005, Special Forces Command also forward deployed a few Benelli M2s to every team location to use as a fighting shotgun or as breaching, really whatever the teams wanted to. And I did rock one on a few missions. I never ended up using it against any enemy combatants as much as I tried, but I did run one as a primary. I know what you're thinking, with that limited range of a shotgun, did I feel handicapped? Well, with slugs and that 14-inch barrel, you can still hit out to 100 yards, and I ran 2 slugs starting out and then all buckshot. My plan was, had I needed to engage threats on the way to the target, you could still hit out to 100 yards, and if anything, I was gonna empty my shotgun in their direction and then load all slugs. And yes, limited outdoors, but indoors for CQB, I think a shotgun makes an excellent primary weapon. There's nothing like sending a 1 ounce load of either buckshot or slug at room distance. You can send one buckshot round as opposed to double tapping or trying to shoot a threat down with 5.56. Why not give them an ounce of lead? So I think especially for law enforcement, even though shotguns have really fallen out of favor in CQB totally, I think they're still an ideal weapon for the right situation. Not so much for the military, because again, if you have to deal with external threats, anything beyond 100 yards, you're not going to be able to engage with a shotgun. But at room distance, these are pretty devastating. And if I was on a police entry team where I'm really not worried about external threats fighting it out in the cities of America, I would not feel handicapped at all if this Benelli M4 was my primary and I had to use this in the house. Again, an ounce of lead in any form is pretty devastating. I know what you're thinking, well, ones if they have body armor? Well, then you go all way of the gun and you aim low and get them down in that pelvis area. Plus, when you're engaging threats, and when people say, oh, they're wearing body armor, everybody assumes they're standing like this and they're just going to take it right in the chest. Chances are the enemy has their hands up holding a gun. If you send an ounce of buckshot this direction, it's going to get all hands, biceps, and all that. So they're still going to take some of that shot. So I think it's still very effective, even with threats against body armor. Drive the threat down and give one to the head. But back to the history of shotguns. So I tried that M2 for a while. Now, it was in 2006 in 5th Special Forces Group that we received 2 Benelli M4s per ODA. It was known as the Joint Service Shotgun, the M1014 or 1014. And outside of 5th Group, I did not see any Benelli M4s. So let's talk fighting shotgun and how to keep this thing loaded. Now, I was taught early on in Special Forces to basically do a workspace reload. That is, retrieve your rounds and keep the gun up in your workspace, good situational awareness, so you can reload or keep that thing topped off and have your head up. The problem with this method, it's one of the slowest. Even if I had my shotgun shells more accessible, you got all that distance. And 2, these guns start creeping down. If you noticed in that Blackwater video, we're running almost vertically. And if you're rolling with a stack, there's not a lot of control, and I just don't like that method. Now, because of my 3-gun training, I started to adopt the rollover, which I'll talk about right now. So in the early 2000s, I also started doing competitive shooting. 3-gun was really outlaw 3-gun, still nowhere near as organized as it is today, but I did adopt the rollover loading technique as far as keeping the gun topped off. And that is, here you are shooting, and if you need to top it off, you roll it up onto your firing shoulder. I've got my trusty drop leg here, and you go ahead and you load shells. And to me, you can still keep good situational awareness, and it's just as positive, and I think you have more control on the shotgun, and there's really very little chance of being able to flag somebody. Plus, you don't have your hand anywhere near the firing control, and it can be very fast. So I like the rollover method as far as keeping the top gun or the shotgun topped off. Now, when I PCS'd and I switched to being an instructor at our primary CQB schoolhouse at Fort Bragg, we had both Benelli M2s and Benelli M4s there. Now, you may be asking what's the difference between a Benelli M2 and an M4. They're both inertia-driven, basically recoil-operated. When the round fires, pushes the bolt back, and does the whole cycling chambering process. But with the Benelli M4, it also has 2 little pistons by the gas tube, and it's gas assist to help with the reliability, running different loads and running it in adverse scenarios. I had no problem running the M2 in Iraq. It ran perfectly. Now these Benelli M4s, again, they got issued around 2006 in 5th Special Forces Group. I don't know if other groups got them. And we had them at the primary CQB schoolhouse, where, like the MP5, we stopped doing formal training on these shotguns probably around 2008. So the training after that was really just up to 18 Bravos and their experience with shotguns, which I think is a shame. Again, in certain applications, I think the shotgun really shines, again, especially for CQB, and I think there should be formal training on shotguns. Now let me talk about ammo. Back in the Iraq days, we used this round right here. This was an excellent breaching round. It's basically powdered graphite, I believe. And you're not trying to blow the lock up. You're actually pushing the lock or the striker mechanism out of the way. You're pushing it out, and that's what these powdered graphite rounds do. Now in 2008, we experimented with running number 4 frangible buck by Remington. I didn't like it at all. Even though it was a frangible round, there's too much splash. You really had to wear gloves. And if you notice in all the pictures, we don't have standoff devices on the muzzles of our shotguns. I didn't start seeing those till about 2006, and I think they look cool, and if you have the shark bite front end, they can help, stick it to a door, but really with proper technique, you don't need that standoff device. So yeah, we found a lot of splash off that number 4 buck frangible. I don't know what SF is running now. Hopefully they're back to a powdered graphite round or powdered steel. I found that those did work the best, and I breached light skin metal doors, heavy wooden doors. If it has a crossbar, you can snap one of those with a breaching round. I breached a lot of doors. Now, as far as combat ammunition, originally we ran slugs and double-aught buck. I believe it was a 9-pellet load. I haven't cut these open, but it was Winchester brand for the buckshot. If you look at this photo right here, a Marine has a bunch of rounds in his vest. Now, early on in the war, basically it was commercial buckshot rounds, red with the brass-colored brass, which if you wear it on the outside of your kit, it really gives you away. Later, the Army was going to switch to these, and these are by Olin Corporation. This is a contract overrun. You can buy these. Got these from Walmart. Here's some double-aught buck right here, and they went to a green case. And I don't know how they made the brass this dark color. I don't know if it's lacquered on there, but that way you can wear it in your shotgun webbing on your kit, and it doesn't stand out as much as these rounds right here. And of course, we had 1-ounce slugs, and in training, we also had birdshot. I don't know which brand, but yeah, we had tons of shotgun rounds available to us. If you look at this picture right here, I'm wearing some of those breaching rounds on my kit. Again, this is back in Iraq days. And when I ran the Benelli M2 as a primary, again, I had 2 slugs, one in the tube, one in the chamber. The rest was all buckshot. And I had, again, 65 rounds on me in total when it came to a combat load. And that's about probably the equivalent of about 7 or 8 mags of 5.56. But I did not feel outgunned because, again, you can give them 1 double-aught buckshot round to the chest, or you got to pump them with 5 or 6 rounds of 5.56. And for CQB, I think really double-aught buck and slugs is a good option. All right, real quick, let me talk shotgun shell pouches. Now, all these pouches right here, these are all from the early days in Iraq. I've held on to them. This side saddle, this is the very same one I had on the side of my Benelli M2. Originally, I didn't have any pouches at all. I went to the Kirkuk Air Base in northern Iraq to an Air Force armory. Air Force SPs, they carry shotguns, some of them anyways. And the armorer there gave me at least a half a dozen of these 12-round shotgun shell holders. They're of a classic design, but they're MOLLE capable, so I use these a lot. I did have this drop leg. You might have noticed it in the Blackwater video. This has gone through several evolutions. So I load with my left hand when I roll the gun over, so I wore this on my left leg. This right here, these little strippers I made from a shotgun bandolier. Basically, go to Walmart, buy one of those 30-round bandoliers. You chop it into 5 or 6 round sections, fold over the top so you can put a loop on here, and this will fit in an M4 mag pouch. So you have rounds right there. Later on in 2007, I got this Paraclete shotgun shell holder. It's actually a great design for the breacher. It's no wider than your standard M4 mag pouch, and it has the capability of holding 19 rounds. It folds open and drops out, so 19 rounds right there. Now, in that Blackwater range video, you might have noticed I'm loading off my forearm. That's an old school 3-gun technique before we had the load 4s and things like that, if you watch the current John Wick movies. Loading off the forearm was a great way because reduced distance from the ammo to your gun equals a faster reload. So I was playing around with that armband at Blackwater. I never wore it down range, but it was something to try. That was early 3-gun days, so there wasn't a lot of options outside of nylon loops for shotgun shells, unlike today. But yeah, this is again all the original pouches, some of them anyways, that I carried in my early days in Iraq. All right, the last technique I want to talk about in terms of being able to reload your shotgun is employing these homemade little strippers. I've got one right here. Again, they basically fit inside an M4 magazine pouch, and the way that works is use my support hand. I actually loop it up, loop it over to my firing hand thumb, and then I can pull shells off, and they're right here by the chamber. Now, of course, I'm at the high ready. I'm in that workspace reload, so you gotta watch your muzzle, but it's a great little way to top off. And once this is empty, you just drop it on the ground if you don't have time to store it, or store it back in your magazine pouch. So during my 3 tours in Iraq from 2003, 2004, 2005, we used shotguns pretty extensively for door breaching. Again, the Mossberg 590 and Remington 870 police models. In 2010, around that time frame, Special Forces regular teams adopted the Mossberg 500 for breaching. And at that time, I'd switched over to 3rd Special Forces Group, and of course, the primary mission is Afghanistan. And we never carried shotguns on any mission in Afghanistan. If we needed to breach a door, we'd use a puck charge, which is basically a dip can filled with C4. We'd stick it on that metal door and blow it. And then once you're in the compound, a lot of them, they just didn't have doors at all, or they just had a curtain. And carrying that shotgun, there's a lot of extra weight humping the mountains of Afghanistan, so it's a lot easier just to carry some small explosive charges. So we never used those 500s for door breaching at all. We used them in training, and that was about it. I didn't see really any teams carry breaching shotguns during my tours in Afghanistan. So there it is, the history of shotguns in Special Forces as I saw it from 1998 up until 2017. Now, this Benelli M4 right here actually belongs to a former teammate of mine. It's his personal M4. Now that I'm done filming, I gotta get this back to him so he can hit the range with it. So as always, hopefully you found this video entertaining and informative. I'm Jeff Gerwich. Thanks for watching.